Hey everybody, welcome to the Improv and Innovation Cafe. I am Kathy Klotz-Guest of Keeping It Human, and I've got my compatriots in fun, my marketers and improvisers, my buddies, my funny comrades, whatever, I could go on. They are joining me again for the threequel? Yeah, three-peat threequel, I think we'll call it. The three-peat, where we're going to talk about content marketing and improv, and we're going to improvise some content marketing ideas live, because that's what we do. So let me introduce my great guests. The first is Gary Ware. Where is he? I don't know, he's here. Gary Ware is from Tower 33 Digital. He's a digital strategist.
That was horrible. That was really bad.
If we can't have puns, then I'm sorry. What's the world come to?
I'm used to it.
That's right, easy to. Well, yeah. Wait till your last name is Klotz-Guest, so there you go. He's a digital media strategist, and we're happy to have him. And my other guest is none other than Brian Carter from Brian Carter Group. He is also a digital media strategist, and he literally wrote the book on Facebook marketing. He's also the author of The Like Economy and co-author of The Cowbell Principle. So, welcome, guys.
Hi. Hello, hello.
Glad to have you back. I'm looking forward to it. So the last time, we've already done 2 of these. Last time we actually did a live round of idea generation using improv tools. So we're going to do that again today. And we actually asked the audience for your suggestions, just like we would an improv show. What are you struggling with? What would you like to concentrate on? And we got several suggestions, and we will use a couple of games to illustrate how you might approach some of these content marketing challenges. So with that, gentlemen, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right.
Do it.
Let's do it. So we have a choice. There were a couple of good suggestions. The first was dealing with organic food company, and they wanted to attract more millennials. So their big challenge was, how do I hit that age range that we're trying to hit? The second one was an insurance company, and so when you have a regulated industry, how can you be creative and stand out when you're basically in a largely undifferentiated industry? And then third was a small boutique digital media agency. Similarly, lots of competition. How do you stand out in a crowd when a lot of your competition is doing the exact same thing? So those are the suggestions. Where do we want to start?
I like the undifferentiated one. Well, that's going to be the easiest one.
Yeah.
Because as we know from Mad Men, we can say anything.
Absolutely.
Like in the pilot, right? Where the cigarette companies, none of them could say anything, so they could say anything they want, right?
Yeah.
Lucky Strike gets toasted. So what was it? Insurance company?
It was an insurance company.
So they could just say our insurance is toasted.
Well, and that brings a really important point up, which is, in an undifferentiated industry, you're really as differentiated as your story and the way you talk about what you do. So that's really, really an important point, because when if you are in banking or in financial services, and there isn't a big perceived difference across services, that's all the more reason to spend on your story and your differentiation with your content. So, yeah.
Yeah, and before we do improv, let's talk about other companies, what they do already, right? You've got Aflac's got a duck that has nothing to do with anything, as far as I can tell. You've got Geico has 15 different ad campaigns, from like the punning folk guys to the pig to the money Harley Davidson guy to the Geico British gecko to the cavemen, right? So it's with an insurance company. It's like, just hire some creative people and do whatever you want. Yeah. Right?
Right. I totally agree, and I think there's a perception, and I'll say this, and I said it offline, and when it comes to financial services, because it's so...
Wait, Kathy's being attacked by a World War II bomber.
I don't know, is it...
that was Gary. Gary's being attacked.
Or is it Gary? I don't know who somebody's being attacked.
Gary's being attacked by Northwest, Cary Grant. Okay. All right.
Well, when you are in an industry that everybody perceives as undifferentiated and also heavily regulated, the thing about the financial services industry, and I know we've all worked with banks, all of us here, the 3 of us, we're aware of the concerns of it being heavily regulated. However, there's more wiggle room that I think people think they have. because just because it is regulated doesn't mean that you can't do certain things to attract millennials. You have to speak to millennials in a way that's really different. You have to. But you have more room and more bandwidth, I think, under the creative umbrella than I think a lot of banks and insurance and all these other types of financial services sometimes think they have.
And one thing with that, Kathy, you were talking about like your story, and a lot of times, everyone tries to be just like everyone else, and then when you do that, you're just the same. So how about for people that are trying to differentiate themselves in a situation where they feel like they have to be very regulated in these sessions? Maybe they just should go very wild, just to go wild and get it out there. Just like, before we go on and do a show, a lot of times we like to do these round water scenes, like where we try to be the worst that we can just to get it out there. But sometimes you get some good stuff.
You do.
Yeah.
Actually, I think that's a really fabulous idea, and I agree. I think it's sort of like in improv, we all know it's like it's better to go way out there and have to pull back than lack energy and not give enough to where the audience can enjoy the show. So I liken it to that. It's better to get a little wild because you don't have to actually write a check for every idea that's out there. Doesn't mean you're going to do that idea, but it's better to have too many ideas that are out there than not enough ideas or too few ideas that are differentiated. So I think you can't go wrong by actually going out there and coming up with some crazy ideas. Maybe you'll ratchet it down just a little bit, but even if you come down a little bit, you'll come to an idea that actually has some legs.
Yeah.
Yep. So that one actually.
Oh, go ahead, Brian.
I was going to say this one might actually be the hardest for us to do because we could do anything.
Yeah, we could.
One thing so with companies, a lot of times they fail to evoke emotion, and if we're trying to, attract millennials, they're very much only going to align themselves with brands that have a story and that speak to them. And one thing that came to mind when I was thinking about, like, how can we help them, like, just have that feeling? It just reminds me of these Apple campaigns where Apple tells these story where it's an Apple campaign, but they're not really talking about themselves. They're talking about the people using their product.
Right.
So as far as an improv game, like, maybe they can go with the whole story spine and take it from the persona of the person that would be using their service. That once upon a time and blah, blah, blah.
Absolutely, they can definitely do that. In fact, that's how I would think, because I don't think nobody buys. I mean, hence to Brian's point, the reason Aflac came into being is because nobody really knew it. Nobody wants to talk about insurance. Nobody wants to spend money on insurance. It's not a fun product. There's nothing really to talk about. I don't want to have it. I have to have it. The only time I really care about it is when I need it. And so it's one of those things where you kind of, I don't think you can come at it necessarily talking about the product, but you really do have to anchor it through the lens of what's a day in the life of a typical customer and a millennial? What would that look like? And why would they even, what are they trying to do? And how can you be a part of that life? Because I think that's really the only way you can anchor anything like financial. Sorry people in the financial services sector, but I think it's the only way you can sort of bring that to a product that otherwise isn't really fun and exciting to talk about.
Or what's maybe the most ridiculous, I don't know if they kind of did this with Mayhem, but I don't think so. I think with Mayhem they were trying to make a personality out of disaster, which is okay. I don't think it was interesting, but I don't think it was funny. But what if you just took stories of disaster to a ridiculous, absurd level? Like, what's the most ridiculous car accident or the most ridiculous flood or whatever? Like, you could take it to a comedic level, so that it's not like horrific. It's not like a story from New Orleans flood. It's a story. It's like oh my gosh, that's absurd funny.
Yeah. I'm thinking about Peter McGraw's benign violations theory, where nobody gets hurt. So if we're talking about the height of comedy, then it's to your point. This is a like a flood or a disaster that is silly, but nobody got hurt.
Right. Like if a guy's on his roof and like some just a series of ridiculous things floats by,
Right.
Like maybe the Titanic is the third thing that floats by with like the ladies like up on the front of the Titanic floating by with our arms out singing or whatever. But you know,
maybe a couple of this is my sense of humor. Maybe a couple of boats that you just can't jump into.
They're too big. The guy's trying to jump. He jumps into the side of the boat, falls into the water because it's a cruise liner. You get in.
Right.
Or the Rock comes by with his helicopter, but then he has to run off and save his family, not you, because he's only saving his family. And like millions of people die, but he saves like 3 people.
That's Liam Neeson. Like, he can only save his daughter. He doesn't have time. Right. He's got a daughter and a wife to save, because that's every movie. He doesn't have time. It's like, I'm sorry about your plight, but I gotta. If there's a ransom note, and it's my daughter and my wife. Sorry, I can't help you.
Yeah, that's funny.
And that reminds me of, like, what are the world's worst? Like, what are the worst things that can happen, like, for insurance? And again, we're just sort of playing fun with it, but the whole point is generating ideas and seeing what the possibilities are, because from once you get the world's worst, then you can start to go the opposite and say, all right, if that's the worst, then where's that sort of middle ground?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And what would be, to your point, Gary, what's a way to take a service, maybe an insurance service, and really make it so bad that no customer on the planet would ever want it? Then you could find the comedy in that, and to your point, back up and say, now, what's a way to make it great, to make it a really great service, you know?
And that's how all those parody videos came out of, what was it, the real life conference calls in real life, like they took like, like what was this is conference calls, and they heightened it.
Right. Like so we understand your house burnt down, and so we're going to replace your house, and we made sure to catalog for you exactly how much dust and mold and dirt was in your house, and we're replacing all of that. You know what I mean? So like they replace everything, including all the crap like that you didn't want in the house.
Right.
That'd be funny.
Wait, we couldn't save any of your photo albums, but congratulations, you're so lucky. Every picture of your mother-in-law survived. There you
go. Brought termites. We couldn't save, your valuables, but we saw that you had termites, so we put
them back in. Yeah, we put them back in for you.
We gave them a little compression in mouth to mouth. We saved them. We saved them.
Little termites. Little CPR.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I think but this is funny. I mean, because we are taking it to the heights of ridiculousness, and that's the beauty of this, is that there's some ideas here that I think could actually have a germ of viability, and that's really important.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then I think that's.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Okay, fine. I'll go ahead.
Rampant politeness. This is runaway politeness.
That's when 2 improvisers are in a discussion. No, please, after you.
Yes, and. No. After you.
Yes, and you.
Yes. I was just gonna say, they show these in commercials all the time where they show the absurd and we laugh at it, and it really highlights how they're special. It's like, hey, look, you know, we wouldn't normally do this, but like, and it shows that they can poke fun at themselves and poke fun at their industry, and that's what I feel millennials, they like.
Yeah, agreed. They want a personality, and to your point, Gary, you said it earlier. They want to know that that a brand has a story that's bigger than the company and cares about people, and they want to see that really human side. And it's not business as usual for millennials anymore. And this is the really big thing that every company needs to understand. The way that you communicated about banking services with baby boomers and even Gen Xers is really different. And millennials will not, they don't care, because they can go get banking anywhere. I mean, in their minds, a lot of this stuff is very undifferentiated. So it's gonna click to them, a company that has a sense of humor, speaks their language, is human, all these different things, you know.
The other thing too that sticks out to me, at least recently, is that I've seen millennials be asked a question about themselves and they answer with a we. Yeah. Which is weird to me.
Yes, the collective we.
Yeah. Well, it's like, yeah, how did you? And they're like, well, what we did was. So I'm like, well, I mean, it might be their friends, it might be their coworkers, and I don't know if that's the way they think or they're being polite, or it doesn't really matter. But I think when it's not just that we have social media, you need to show groups.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's also, I think it's also a sense of social responsibility. If you look at the types of companies that millennials really care about, they want to know that there is a sense of a company that actually cares about other things and not just profits. So I mean, you look at all kinds of brands like Warby Parker, and they have a choice, but they're very popular with millennials because they also kind of do the Tom's thing. They do a 1-for-1. When you buy something, they give away glasses to somebody in need, and so people have choices. People have choices, and millennials are making conscious choices about that.
Yeah.
That's
So,
good.
yeah.
Well, I think we spent a third of our time on this already, so
Yeah. Good.
let's move to another one.
People in regulated industries, like seriously, the major takeaway is like don't be so hard on yourself.
Yeah, exactly. You have more wiggle room than I think you do, and I think that's what we're all saying is because you're not going to run afoul of any laws if you just are creative in the way that you talk about what you sell and how you sell it and who you affect, and having a sense of humor about what you do. And whether you like it or not, the Mayhem ads, I think it was great that Allstate recognized that they had to do something different and ratchet up the funny. They tried, and I give them credit for doing some, some of them I think they cracked me up.
I didn't remember that it was Allstate, to be honest.
Yeah.
That's always a problem when whatever you're doing, I can't remember which company it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one thing in the book Contagious by Jonah Berger. He was talking about the principles that get people to share. And they said the whole Trojan horse effect, where the brand needs to be a Trojan horse, where when they share the story, because it's not just like, oh, that guy fell off a house and a funny ha ha ha, that the brand persists with that story. Because a lot of times people are going to share it because the elements were funny, but they forget, because it's not important to them, the brand doesn't go with it. Like, everyone seems to go like Geico, boom, 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 but like, yeah, I'm the Allstate. Like, what's that, Allstate?
Think about it. Yeah, Geico sounds like the word gecko, and I don't know if they did that intentionally, but I hope so, because that makes sense.
I think so.
Yeah,
I think so. That was my read on it, and you're right, because it all has to tie back to the brand story. So what we're talking about is, funny's great and all that, but I think we're all marketing people, so we're all in the back of our heads always thinking about how does it advance the larger company story, and so there has to be a connection there. I mean, it can't just funny's great, funny in the service of the company story is better, and that's really what you have to think about. So.
Agreed.
All right, so we moving on to the next one. We have organics or a boutique digital media agency. What do you think, guys?
Let's go organics. That might be fun.
Organics, yeah, and they had a similar issue, which they were trying to appeal more to millennials, because millennials do care about the food that they eat. They care about it being healthy, and they also care that it's sustainable and the way that it's, that the animals are treated a certain way. And I think there's more of a awareness with millennials about that.
They're having trouble reaching millennials? What's why?
My sense of their suggestion was that organic has become a buzzword. So how do you make it meaningful? And make it stand out in a way that isn't lost among the noise, because I think everybody and their brother is saying that their brand is organic and natural, and just because something we all know now that sometimes people use an organic label and it may or may not be organic. So there's confusion. I think there's confusion. There's also everybody tries to claim that they're green or sustainable or organic, and I think it gets lost in that noise.
Yeah. So what do you think their main thing is trying to differentiate their version of organic? Yeah. That's sort of funny. Yeah. It's like, we're organic. No, we're organic.
We're organic. Well, and that's the funny part, is that organic is such a movement that how do you, and you have companies like Chipotle who've been able to really claim sustainability and the way that they do things, farm to table, in a way that I think stands out, the way they tell their story. But it is funny, just because now everybody's claiming organic, and I think I never thought about it that before, but that then becomes a sea of sameness, and so you can't really. and the way you come at it, I don't think you can come at it by saying, Gary, it's funny, we're organic, you're not really organic.
Well, we have the same issue now that we had with the last one. It's the same thing that we had with Mad Men.
Yeah.
So sometimes it actually comes from a story from one of the beer companies. I think it was back in it's an old advertising story. Can't remember which brewing company it was. But they all brewed their beer the same way, and it was the number of times that they filtered their beer. And it was just, I think, the company that told that story first, and they talked about the process. So that's one way to go at it, is like, what about the organic process story haven't you told? I mean, it could be, sometimes people overlook that because everybody does it. Right. But if no one's told that story, you get to own it because you tell it first.
That's a good idea.
But, okay, so I'm trying to think about this. So we're talking about identity, truth, lies,
videotape,
or who's the most at something, who's the best at something.
Yeah. Or if this is true, then what else is true?
We're talking about that. I think it's also a little bit of the fortunately, unfortunately, or good news, bad news.
Yes.
You know, it's like the good news is you're organic. The bad news is everybody's organic. But the good news is you probably have a process that's unique to you. The bad news is everybody thinks their process is unique. But the good news is, so I think that's more of that.
Yeah. Well, because with that game, good news, bad news, like, it takes you on these tangents because you're like, all right, the good news is this, the bad news is this, and then now you have to say, so what? And then that takes you on a tangent, because so if the good news is we're organic, the bad news is everyone's organic. So what else is that now we need to focus on our story? The good news is, the good news is now we have a unique story. The bad news is so does everyone else, but the whole point of doing an exercise like that is you're just sort of exercising your brain and going on tangents.
Which is why we're gonna complete that. We're gonna do it. So
okay, I haven't played that game. Okay, let's do it.
Now the good news is you basically alternate. Every other one is good news, bad news. Like fortunately, unfortunately. So the bad news is where we left it, Gary. Is everybody has a story.
Yes. The good news is our story involves the process of saving the Earth.
And so from there I go, so what?
The bad news is...
the bad news is everybody's saving the Earth.
The good news is we are saving the Earth and and space.
The bad news is space. The bad news is people don't really care about space because they're not there yet.
Oh, okay. So I do good news?
You do good news.
Good news, bad news, yeah.
When do we do so what?
That's
the so what,
It is the so what,
And it takes you on this tangent.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm confused, I think. But so where are we at now?
No one really cares about space.
Okay. The good news is that since no one cares about space, we're going to own space.
The bad news is Elon Musk probably will get there first.
The good news is now we can partner with Tesla, and no one else is partnering with Tesla.
Oh, it's my turn. Was that good news?
That was good news.
Good news.
Bad news. The bad news is Elon Musk smells.
Well, he has Musk in his name, so.
Oh, here we go. All right, if that's the bad news, then the good news is most people who just eat organic smells because they probably don't shower.
Is that the bad news or good news? It depends on who you talk to, right?
I know, right?
The good news is, ladies, our process for organics will make your man smell better.
Yeah, there's a campaign right there. Not that we want to steal from Old Spice, but
no. And you can take it to its
but you could have.
Yeah.
You could make fun of organic stereotypes.
Yeah.
I agree.
versus just regular people that want to eat healthy foods. That's one approach.
Yeah. No, I think that's where it gets really silly, is because you start ending up with a mental picture of what you think organics is, and there is so much misinformation, and part of owning the story could be poking fun at sort of the yuppie, the whole kind of the Whole Foods is, without saying Whole Foods, organic customer that you think it is, when a lot of people just want to eat right. They just want to do the right thing for the environment, and they just, at the end of the day, that's all they want to do.
Yep.
And smell good too.
Yeah.
And that might be fun to just, our organic, our customers are just everyday people.
Yeah.
Sure, Elon Musk can eat our yogurt, but you know what? So can you and your boyfriend.
Yep, exactly. And see, that reminds me of have you guys heard of that campaign by Organic Fuel? It's called Save the Bros. It's so funny. And so it's essentially about I think it's milk, it's chocolate milk. It's a high protein shake, and it's this parody on bros, bros from like New Jersey's that like do the fist pump and stuff like that, and they're all like ripped, and it's like, you can save a bro by buying one of these organic things, and it was such a parody on, like, because they're really ripped and they're probably using these protein shakes, and again, it's so funny and it's so catchy, and they're aligning their product, because it's high in protein, yada yada yada.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
I think that's exactly it. You can have a lot of fun with parodies in this case, because we do get an image of organics, and there is that image of the customer paying 3 or 4 times what somebody else would pay at another grocery store for their organic stuff, and so we kind of draw some conclusions that may or may not be right about who that customer is, and I kind of like.
You could also do like. What was it, Reese Witherspoon, remember the Legally Blonde type character? Mm-hmm. You could have her come into a Whole Foods type store that's populated by a whole bunch of like hippie women with like armpit hair who are like she's like, I'm looking for organics, and they're like, what? And like, so she's like the new type of customer, and they're having like this crazy reaction to her.
Yeah. That'd be fun if you mix Reese Witherspoon with the characters on Portlandia with Fred Armisen, like the women bookstore owners.
Oh yeah, if you got those two in there with that would be ideal.
I think that could be very funny. Yeah, no, I think that mix your universes. That's the other thing that's really great about if you take an improvisational approach to this stuff, is that mix universes. I like to take an idea that over here and then an idea over here in column B, and they seemingly don't belong, but find the similarities or the intersection to put these two in this crazy world and see what you get, because I think a lot of ideas come out of taking two seemingly dissimilar things but finding that commonality. And that's
something from our the screenwriting class that I'm in, there's a guy named, I can't remember the guy's name. Oh, Kessler, Arthur Kessler, wrote a book, tried to solve the question of what is creativity, and I think in the 70s, and he had this thing called by association, and it's what is bring A and B together, the last two things you expect to be together, but they're best if they're really far apart, and they create a third thing you would never expect from them.
Exactly. Yeah, no, it's so true. One of the exercises I had a group of people do pretty recently at a company, and we were just kind of brainstorming ideas, and somebody came up with the idea, totally random. I made them pick from column A and B, and one was sort of a like Uber Lyft kind of service, and the other was like a pets thing, and they ended up coming up with the idea of like an Uber for pets. What if we had like a Match.com or dating service where we actually had a limo service for pets that were dating and taking them to the doggy birthday party? It's so crazy, but there are people out there that dress their animals, have birthday parties for their animals. My dog has been invited to a doggy birthday. Nice. I'm just saying.
That's funny.
So there's some fun to be had, and some really, and even if you don't do some crazy ideas like that, there's probably a germ of an idea in there somewhere that could actually be some funny content, some viable content.
Yeah. And I think with that, it's I don't know if it's free or you have to subscribe to it, but they publish the mega trends, where they talk about things like crowdsourcing and companies like Uber. And if you go and look at those mega trends and see, take maybe a few of the mega trends and do like what Kathy mentioned and put them together and then put it a whole layer as it relates to your industry or whatever you're doing. And you might not have anything, but like Kathy mentioned, you might have a germ of an idea that might be some really good content that's going to engage people.
Yeah.
Like the Uber of organic foods or like that, you mean?
Yeah.
Because if Uber's all about it's like the concierge of cars, so what if it's like you get a farmer that comes to your house and he does like all these diagnostics on you and what you guys eat, and he's like, oh, here you are, here are your plants and organic things, and I'm going to grow them in your backyard for you.
It's so true. There's so many amazing things that could be done. I spoke with the Silicon Valley Humane Society, and they did the Eddie the Terrible campaigns that were very successful. They took this dog named Eddie, who was a total jerk, and he bit people, and they needed to give him a home, and they put him in this like Breaking Bad kind of thing, and then they put devil horns on him, and they gave him did a whole series of campaigns, and they were just so honest. They were like, he's a jerky dog. But you know what? Everybody deserves a second chance, and it worked. It was so successful. But here's what they ended up learning is that, again, taking the unexpected, mixing ideas. In Silicon Valley, where I'm at, everybody's got Wi-Fi, but people don't go out to these pet stores much anymore. They go to the doggy parks. So they started taking their adopt-a-dog events to the doggy parks. Then they started bringing coffee bars and Wi-Fi bars into the Humane Society. So they started taking, how do we catch the best element of digital society here in Silicon Valley and intersect that with these dogs that need homes? And so they started then having events where baseball games, at the doggy parks, fashion shows for the dogs at the doggy parks. And what they found is that that's where the millennials would hang out and meet. And they brought their events to those rather than trying to get people to come to the Humane Society. So they got smart. They got very, very smart about how do we mix things up here. And I really loved their approach,
Yeah, going back to what we did earlier, like insurance, how about we take something like health insurance or insurance provider and put them with parkour or something like where people probably would get hurt.
Yeah, there you go.
We're gonna take
just insurance agents hanging out at the parkour.
Have them do parkour.
Would you like to ride a skateboard with a helmet on and some pads? We sell life insurance and health insurance.
Yeah.
You could do some fun. You could do some fun things there.
That reminds me of a mom. Like, what if insurance? Like, we haven't seen that yet. At least I don't think so. Like, we have all these wacky spokespeople for insurance. What if one was like your mom? And she's out there putting your helmet on. Be safe.
Yeah.
So that's essentially what insurance is. It's it's like your protective mom and doesn't want you to get hurt. But if you do, she's there to kiss it and make you feel better.
Yeah. And just swatch upside the head a little bit and go, God, I told you to use your.
Right?
That's pretty funny. I'm really liking that mom thing. I think that could be a very funny spokesperson.
Yeah.
And you could even make it a younger mom, maybe more of a millennial Gen X mom that people might relate to. And I think that's funny. I think that's.
Yeah, she's riding skateboards and stuff too. She's trying to be hip.
She's a cool mom. Not all moms drive minivans. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Those are great ideas. How about our third one, which was a boutique agency, just social media, small agency, and I think a very similar issue, which is, for a social media agency dealing with tech companies, it can be hard to stand out. It can be hard to just do content that's different, and especially when it's really about your clients. It's not about necessarily your work.
Which agency is this? Are we going to be giving our competitors ideas here? Who is this we're giving ideas to?
It's a small agency. They didn't say who. They didn't give a name. They gave their name, but I don't know the name of the agency. I don't know the name of the agency. But
it's not keeping it human?
No.
Okay.
No.
Small agency, they're in Silicon Valley.
No.
It was solo.
No. Nice try.
A cool mom runs it? No?
But no.
Okay. All right.
No. And I don't consider myself really a digital agency in the larger. I really consider myself a storyteller, but
they're
yeah.
trying to stand out, and
you guys are so funny.
They're trying to stand out and do content marketing for tech companies. Yeah, I think they should do parkour and. I'm just trying to list ideas we already came up with.
Well, I think, like what Brian's talking about, like how can they be better storytellers? Like at the end of the day, if you tell awesome stories that spread, people are going to like, that was cool. Like, who did this? So like maybe like they should start looking at maybe they can do a series. I'm just throwing things out there. A series of we would have done it like this. And take some campaigns of people that they probably want to work with and like show how they would have done it.
Yeah. I think the thing that strikes me too is that when you're so saturated in the midst of tools, everybody's talking about the tools. People really they're missing the opportunity. Again, going back to story, it's really about the fundamental story.
Yeah.
And tell people, I don't care if you're using Pinterest, or I don't care what kind of campaign it is. It really doesn't matter. It's really it's got to go back to the content. And I think when I look at a lot of agencies, big or small, and I look at a lot of what they're producing, the ones that stand out in my mind are the ones that do the things we just don't expect. And so much of it is a sea of sameness. And I think that's the thing with all these things. I think all the suggestions is that you can get lost in a sea of undifferentiation if you don't think differently about it.
Yeah, and how you think differently is, it goes back to like the core things that we've done, like the story spine, telling a story about your persona and the trials and tribulations that they went through and how they resolved that. A lot of, if this is true, then that is true, world's worst, just getting out of your head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I would use the same thing. I would say, going back to the contrast idea, I love mashups. That's how my brain works. So one of the ways when we're doing sketch and we're writing is we'll force ourselves to take two different universes and how do we bring these two together in some kind of really weird way? How do we, what would it look like if, a preschool set up shop right next to a strip joint? What would that look like?
Right.
Find the crazy in taking these what looks like they don't belong, these extreme worlds, and then what would that look like? So I say the same is exactly true of content. Brian, you and I talked about pets and how you can use your dog. Brian did a whole series around what he learned about being weird from his dog. What his dog taught him about marketing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Did we lose him?
We did, yeah. He's gonna be like a magician and sort of pop back up here in a second.
He will. Yeah. He will. But yeah, that's one way. I would say contrast is a tool that I really love to use. I like the good news, bad news, where you force yourself. I think the great thing about the good news, bad news thing is it forces you to say, all right, so what? Everybody else may be similar and have similar products, but we don't have to tell similar stories.
Yeah. And then like along those ideas, I like the whole thing of mixing weird scenarios. And what if cats or pets ran social media? They did their own social media. Like, what would that look like?
Yeah. Oh, that would be fun. What if you took like the Humane Society, and you took and you had a digital media agency run by animals?
Yes. What would that look like?
What would that look like?
And take the personas of those animals and have them. Oh, that would be so good. What if the personas of specific animals were tied to archetypes at agencies? A dog would be like the account manager, or like the Don Draper of the the group, and then like maybe we have a parakeet, and the parakeet, because it's sort of yappy, is like maybe like the client. I don't know, I like that universe.
Yeah. I do too. I think you can do a lot with animals. And I think one of the reasons too why, going back to the Humane Society for a second, why they were so successful with what they did is that they actually recognized that even these jerky dogs who get second chances, people anthropomorphize animals. And we see in a dog that needs redemption our own story. And we're like, that dog's a jerk. Poor Eddie. He's probably a good egg. He just had a bad owner or a bad day. And everybody deserves redemption and a second chance. And there's that, if you can anthropomorphize anything, I think people see themselves in animals. I think it's true, you know?
And they see, that reminds me of Jim Henson. When he was in his early days, he would do, for IBM and Xerox and stuff, he would do these meeting videos. Google them. They're hilarious. Yeah. But they made fun of the people that he did them for, and because they were Muppets, it was okay. The fact that Ralph, the dog, was making fun of like how boring meetings are, like it was okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you can get, and I've always believed you have a longer leash if you execute well with humor, and if you parody something, but you parody it well executed is the key. Yes. I think you have pun intended, you have a long leash. You can do a lot of things, but you have to make it fun. Brian, while you were gone, we talked a little bit about the animals and what if animals ran a digital media agency, and we talked about the post that you did about what you learned about marketing from your dog, what your dog you actually did a post on that, which I love, which made me laugh, about what was it, 7 things about marketing.
7 things my dogs taught me about marketing. I actually wrote it because the most interactive post I've ever done for a client or anything was a dog related Facebook post, and it's got a ton of engagement, so I actually created the blog post because of that, to take advantage of that traffic. But yeah, that would be hilarious. So you're saying like animals running the agency? That'd be hilarious.
Yeah.
And then Gary said, how about giving them sort of archetypes? So maybe your dog's the office manager, maybe your cat's the HR, Cat Bert. Sorry, Dilbert's already done it. Scott Adams already done it. But you've got these different animal archetypes and who they are in the office and who would they be. And I think
Can we make the CEO
funny.
a parrot that just sort of says the same thing over and over again? How about that?
Need more money.
I think we could. I think we actually could. I think that's hilarious. I think there's so much satire and parody to be had in actually anytime because you can, again, people tend to anthropomorphize animals, and if anything, I learned anything from that Eddie the Terrible campaign, I think, and in your post, Brian, on dogs and marketing, people see themselves so much through that lens, they identify with animals. So there you go. We could use animals in all those campaigns. I think what the general conclusion here is, folks, is that animals are funny. Figure out a way to use animals.
If you can mix animals and babies, home run.
That's true.
And bacon. If you can work in bacon.
Bacon. Those are all in my keynotes. But it's funny. Like, animals work better than babies because some people have. More people have hang-ups about babies than they do about animals, believe it or not.
No, it's absolutely true. Yeah. I really think, honestly, I really think part of the reason, these animal campaigns have been so darn successful is we see ourselves in these animals, and they're innocent, and we go, oh my gosh, that animal didn't deserve that. And more people really identify with animals. It's very funny, but it's actually very interesting because it's a very real phenomenon. Yeah. It's strange.
We feel bad.
It's strange. I think in a way it's like, well, that's not my baby. Like, people will be like, that's somebody else's baby. That's not my baby.
But everyone's had a pet or something. Or can relate to a pet.
Yeah, you're more okay with like petting someone else's dog than you are with holding someone else's baby. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No, I think that's right. And I think in all those things, and just to kind of step back and kind of summarize the big picture, because there's a lot of fun stuff here, and that's why I love talking to you guys, is that there's a lot of tools you can use. You can just, good news, bad news, and I think the so what is implied. I think we confused Brian. But the so what is sort of, sorry about that.
Yeah.
It's an implied thing, but it forces, as Gary says, if you say, well, the bad news is everybody's got the same story, then it forces you to, on the good news, think bigger. Think bigger. Think bigger. You're not there yet. Go deeper. So the so what is, so what? Well, everyone's got the same story. So what the hell's special about your stuff? So the good news, bad news is a great way to get out of the mindset of, well, there's nothing we can do. We're like everybody else. No. do some good news, bad news. Get yourself out of that way of thinking, I think, is what we're saying. You can do the contrast. Do a mashup. Take different things in different crazy environments and put them together and see how that plays. I think there's so much you can do with that. Animals. Figure out, if your company were run by animals, what would that look like? What would they say? What would they do? What archetypes would each of those animals be? Those are fun ways to do it. Yes, and everything to the extreme. As we talked about earlier, get it to that extreme. You don't have to do the extreme.
Absurd.
Most people, take it to a comical absurd. I mean, with the flood, kind of thing where nobody gets hurt. It's kind of funny if Liam Neeson's in a boat that floats by, but he doesn't have the time because he's got to go and pick up his wife and his kid.
I can't pick you up. I have to use my special set of skills. Gotta go.
Right. Yes. It's pretty extreme, but it's funny. And okay, so you might not go there, but then ratchet it down just a little bit. What could be silly and funny that would make people laugh? Yes, if your termite survived, everything else was damaged, but the termite survived. That's pretty funny. Find those moments of extreme, but intersect with funny, where nobody gets hurt, and you've got some innocent fun that you can do. Did I leave anything else out, guys? We covered a lot.
By associate, bring together a clash of contexts or things that don't belong together to create something new.
Contrast. Yeah. Mashups. Do the mashups, and the more absurd that they look like they don't go together, the more your brain will be happy when you find something. You make something out of these two disparate things. Your brain's going to find something really hilarious in it. Yeah.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else? Did we miss anything else? No, Gary, we got it.
We did it. That was everything.
Yeah, we solved all the problems.
We did. I think the next one we should do is world peace. I think we should figure out, because we're on a roll.
I know.
But yeah, world peace is already hilarious. I don't think we need to do anything to it.
Well, it's hilarious, not in a really good way. We might, if there were more improvisers doing work down there.
Yeah, you're right. It's not funny. It's absurd.
Okay, check this out. What if improvisers ran the UN?
Oh, see, there you go.
And we can do a parody of that.
Well, it wouldn't be any less relevant.
It actually could be more. That's right.
It'll be more funny.
It couldn't be worse. It could not be worse. Yeah. No, I'm with you.
All right, I see your bombs, and I'll raise you.
Exactly. All right, everybody. We'll go round robin here. Got anything to plug? Anything you want to tell the audience that you're working on? Brian, we'll start with you. What's going on?
I got a course coming out. Hopefully, be out soon, sometime here in October, called Social Marketing Profit System. It's pretty much all about Facebook marketing, advertising, from amazing.com. At some point this month, October 2015, it's supposed to come out. Amazing.com.
Nice. Very cool.
Nice.
How about you, Gary? I know you're working on some play stuff, so tell us.
Yes, exactly. I'm almost done with my play challenge. So if you go to the instituteofplay.com, you can get on the email list. I got a lot of really good stuff that I'll even give you like a little snippet. When I was brainstorming with some people, we said that it would be a code word that we could institute during a meeting. So if someone says a buzzword, everyone does Pee Wee Herman style and get up and do ah. And the whole point is to just break up the day, have some fun.
I love doing stuff like that. I love having a key buzzword of the day. It's sort of a Toastmasters meets jargon kind of.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And Brian and I are working on a book, and we've got our Story DNA podcast, which is a lot of fun. You can check that out. A lot of good practitioners on story, and we're with some really great conversations about how to, and we explore lots of different stuff. So yeah. So there you go. Thanks everybody for joining us today. Thanks Gary. Thanks Brian.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, pleasure.
Bye. Be good.
Bye.
Bye everybody.